The story is about how Suzuki, Japan's most notorious prisoner, escapes from prison every time, no matter how high the security is. And this story is about Suzuki, who is currently serving his sentence in Japan's highest security prison. On checking duty, the guard walks around. After the guard leaves, Suzuki suddenly smiles and takes out one of his teeth. After a while, the guards come back to check again. But this time Suzuki has already escaped. They suspect that someone is present there. But no novice is found. He escapes without making a sound, hiding here and there. When the guard checks the isolation cell again, he realizes that Suzuki has escaped. They immediately call the other guards and soon the place is crowded. When Suzuki was escaping, the prison's siren starts blaring loudly. Suddenly heavy rain starts, and we are shown the story from 12 years ago, when some prisoners, including Suzuki, were brought to a prison, where he was to serve his sentence, because he never spoke. Everyone thought he was mute. He had an upside-down Mount Fuji tattoo on his chest. Suzuki was already famous for escaping from prison and had done it 3 times before. After that, Suzuki was taken to a small room with only one window. He looked at the window carefully. His mind was already working on a plan. Outside, the guard told the prison warden, Mr. Murace, that Suzuki will not escape this time. But when he looked through the glass, Suzuki had already disappeared. The warden ordered the whole city to be surrounded so that Suzuki could not escape. But the guards caught him in just 20 minutes. It is not known why. But Suzuki was running straight on the train tracks. After that, he was caught and put back in the same room. But this time his hands were handcuffed. When a guard looked inside, Suzuki was sleeping with a cloth over his face. In anger, the guard asked him to remove the cloth. But when he did not, the guards beat him brutally. The next morning, the warden took out Suzuki's old records and found out that whenever he escapes, he is always caught on the train tracks. That night, the warden went to chat with the guard and found that Suzuki had unlocked his handcuffs. In anger, the warden beat him and asked how he opened the handcuffs. But Suzuki remained silent. After that, Suzuki was beaten again and again. One day Suzuki was playing with a small wire, which he had somehow hidden and brought inside the prison. The question arises as to how he brought the wire inside. Maybe he hid it in his mouth. With the help of the wire, he used to unlock his handcuffs. After a few days, the warden went on a week's leave, and Suzuki saw an opportunity to escape. He used all his strength and tried to open the lock. Soon a grand checking was done, and the guard saw Suzuki sleeping with a cloth over his face. But he left without saying anything. But the truth was that Suzuki was not inside. He was hiding on the ceiling. He was waiting for the right moment to escape. After the guard left, he slowly climbed up and hit the last place on the ceiling and escaped. When the guard found out, they immediately sounded the siren and informed the warden, who immediately left for the prison. The next morning, the police were planning to catch Suzuki, and the warden also arrived. He ordered that only one team should be sent to the train tracks. The officers thought the warden had gone crazy, but he was sure that Suzuki would be found there, and indeed, Suzuki was caught on the train tracks again. What is going on in this story? Is Suzuki's mind sharper than a computer? Later, it is revealed that Suzuki's intelligence and planning led to his capture. Because of the warden's cleverness, Suzuki was caught, and the warden was promoted. He became a big officer who went to all the districts to check the condition of the prisoners. On the other hand, Suzuki escaped again and was caught again on the tracks. Every year he was sent to a new prison with even tighter security. But he managed to escape from everywhere. That's why the media called him the star fugitive. And he became famous all over the country. 12 years later, Suzuki was brought to the central prison, where he was kept in tight security. 10 guards were standing just to keep an eye on him. His room was made of solid cement, and had many locks on the door. This was the same isolation cell that we saw at the beginning of the story. After being put in isolation, Suzuki looked around and was planning to escape again. A guard brought food to his cell. But before that, Suzuki caught him and handcuffed him. The guard immediately blew the whistle, and many other guards arrived. They beat him brutally. When Suzuki regained consciousness, he saw the guards leaving. His face was covered in blood, which was dripping onto the iron bars. The next morning, the guard put more locks on his handcuffs so that he could not open them. Before leaving, he did some maintenance on Suzuki's body. In this way, Suzuki's days were passing. He was deliberately provoking the guards. They would beat him, and then he would drip his blood onto the iron bars. One day, the guards beat him so much that his tooth broke. But Suzuki picked it up and smiled strangely. It seemed like everything was going according to his plan. After that, Suzuki started making something on the wall with his tooth. After a few weeks, Suzuki attacked another guard, and this time he was given the most dangerous punishment. They hung him from a long chain. A year passed, and Suzuki was still serving his sentence. His condition had deteriorated, his body was rotting, and maggots had formed on his wounds. Finally, that evening, the guard came and opened his chains. After a whole year, Suzuki was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. On the other hand, the old warden, Mr. Kahani, came to inspect the prison. He went to the isolation cell and saw that Suzuki's condition was very bad. But he ignored it and left. That night, the story began from where it started. When the lightning flashed outside, Suzuki put his plan into action. He took out his tooth and started unlocking his handcuffs. Actually, Suzuki was not making anything on the wall. He was sharpening his tooth so that it could be used to unlock the handcuffs. The officials were unaware that Suzuki had been planning this all along. He opened the handcuffs and went to the door. He started pushing the iron bars. Due to the constant dripping of blood, the bars were covered in rust. In just a few moments, the bars broke, and Suzuki escaped from the prison. After that, the story of Suzuki's birth was told. His mother died as soon as he was born, and his father was rotting in prison. That's why he was living with his relatives. One day, while practicing in the jungle, he saw a man coming from afar. It was his father. They talked for a while, and then Suzuki saw the Mount Fuji tattoo on his father's chest. Unfortunately, some police arrived who wanted to catch Suzuki's father. He started running straight on the train tracks. Suzuki took an oath that one day he would definitely meet his father. In the present, Suzuki was running on the tracks again. The warden was chasing him from behind, asking him to stop. But to everyone's surprise, Suzuki stopped. In just a few moments, a team of guards arrived and caught him. The country's most secure prison could not stop Suzuki, so Mr. Kahani ordered that he be sent to the world's most dangerous prison, Present Oil. It was not an ordinary prison. It was built in the middle of the sea, where there was a strong current, and most importantly, there were no train tracks, and the sea was full of sharks. It was impossible to escape from there. The conditions inside the prison were also very dangerous. There were thousands of guards all around, and if any prisoner tried to escape, he would be shot on sight. When Suzuki arrived, he was immediately locked in his cell, which was not a room, but a few rods that were tied around his body so that he could not move. On the other hand, Mr. Kahani was searching for information about Suzuki in the prison library. He found some old files and started reading them. In the prison, Suzuki was standing with his eyes closed, but his mind was working. Although it was impossible for anyone to escape from there, Suzuki's brain was working on a plan. Suddenly, he dislocated both his shoulders and started squeezing out of the small space. A prisoner saw him doing this, but he was so drunk that he could not say anything. On the other hand, Mr. Kahani was still doing his research when the prison siren started blaring. Although the warden was happy because the guards would get a chance to shoot a prisoner, but Mr. Kahani tried to explain that Suzuki was not an ordinary prisoner, but the warden ignored him. The next morning, many guards were given guns and spread all over the island. The warden was explaining something to his men when Mr. Kahani arrived. He told the warden that Suzuki was actually looking for his father, and that's why he was silent. But the warden did not believe him, and just then, the truth about Suzuki's escape was revealed. Actually, everything that had happened so far was part of Suzuki's plan. He had been escaping and getting caught on purpose, so that he could finally reach Present Oil. His real intention was to free his father. Finally, Suzuki met his father, and after so many years, they hugged each other and cried. Unfortunately, Mr. Kahani, the warden, and the other guards were approaching, but before they could arrive, Suzuki and his father disappeared. Suzuki took his father to the edge of the island, where he had already prepared a paraglider. Both of them got on it and flew away. On the other hand, Mr. Kahani was trying to talk to an old prisoner, but then he saw the Mount Fuji tattoo on his chest, which meant that Suzuki had taken the wrong person. After so many years of hard work, Suzuki had made such a big mistake. Can you tolerate so much trouble for your father? Please tell me in the comments.